Hello, everybody. We are working on our second episode podcast with Mr. Scott Stafford.
That's right.
Stafford.
Scott Stafford, yeah.
And we are excited because we're about to dig into some more education, information, knowledge about Mr. Scott, SLPs, how that ties to stuttering, some film work. So I'm ready to get into it. So for those who don't know, I reached out to Mr. Scott via LinkedIn.
Yes, sir.
And asked him to have a sit down with us because we are finishing up a film about stuttering.
Oh, interesting.
Which we can get into. And
very cool.
I wanted to sit down with more SLPs. I've heard of them.
Sure.
Working with more people who stutter.
Right.
And I said, man, let me talk to them. Let me have a conversation so I can understand it more. So for those who don't know, how long you been an SLP? What got you started? What got you on this path?
So I'll kind of recap what we had talked about just to, but I'll do it shorter. But had another degree from Oklahoma Christian, went back to school in '99, went to Abilene Christian. Went there with kind of a vague plan that didn't really work out like I thought. I met a gal that helped run the communications disorders department there. It's a speech pathology program named Dee, and took a class and liked it. I'm someone who does have a stuttering issue. I've had that since I was a boy, and so it was kind of a natural fit. Some of the things that I teach, I am doing right now to help myself not get so stuck. So,
is it light stutter? I think most people would say. Doesn't sound like he has a stutter.
Well,
to me.
I think technically, while I was at Abilene, and I'm glad I did this, I took what was that course called? Anyway, it was a neuropsychology course, because I was thinking possibly psychology. And what the professor there said is that I probably have what's called an apraxia. And so it's a motor planning the action where there is a problem, the issue can come and go. So, for example, someone who has a limb apraxia, they might naturally wave goodbye, but if you told them, raise your hand and put it on your head, they can't do it. Like they can't plan the movement. So there are times when, for whatever reason, the fluency is there right now. Praise God, it's there. And I can talk pretty well. We might run into a phrase or word or something that I will have to kind of get through it. It's like and so there have been some hurdles that just experience and my education and understanding more about it and just God I've been able to get over those. And so, but it's been a joy to have my background and be a speech therapist who works with, kids, and I work with children and adults.
So with us knowing that, you kind of can apply what you've learned to yourself at this point. You don't yourself go seek therapy.
Well, I did go to a clinic before I went back to school in the mid-'90s. I went to a place called Hollins College, and it's kind of a boot camp that teaches really severe stutterers even, and not so severe stutterers. I've never been a super severe stutterer.
Yeah.
I've seen I remember a video of a gentleman who it literally took him nearly a full minute to get one word out, every single word. It was exhausting to watch. So
severe.
And they teach a very specific breathing technique and gentle onset of every word part of the time, and then another part of the time you're just connecting all the words together carefully so that you interrupt the voicing as little as possible. So that was a big help. The very famous news interviewer John Stossel is a stutterer who had gone there, and that's how I learned about it. Was watching. He did a little expose or whatever on that place, and so I ended up going there. So that was very helpful.
Yeah, because I haven't met many speech language pathologists, first of all, and I definitely haven't met one who suffered with stuttering on their own. So it's very interesting. Your clients that you work with most of the time, you go from your youngest client from...
So a speech pathologist, they work with all kinds of issues. So they might work with babies and young kids on swallowing, or adult stroke victims on swallowing. Most of my kiddos I'll ever work with have speech and language issues. Their articulation is very imprecise and hard to understand them. But certainly there are the cases where the child stutters or the adult stutters. My only stuttering case right now is an adult that I just started with. So.
And this particular client, is this their first time going to a therapist? Because I'm thinking...
I think it is not.
Okay, yeah. Because I'm thinking...
Oh, you know
they
what?
start younger. Your
Yes,
first time with a speech pathologist is probably when they're kids or teens.
Right. Well, yeah, let me kind of speak to that. Actually, I'm remembering. I'm sorry, I forgot. This is interesting. She is in her 30s, and she just began to stutter not long ago because she began to have seizures.
Oh.
So there was neurological damage from the seizures, and that is where her stuttering was born. But as far as children, stuttering generally does begin during the toddler years. And sadly, a lot of the time, the child does not get any therapy until they are sometimes quite a bit older, 10, 11, 12, teenagers, when they really start to really care about the fact that they don't talk as well as the super popular school politician, or
That's
whatever.
True.
Or they want to pursue something that does take a lot of, there's a lot of demand on being verbal. You want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want
a lot
to do
of
things.
that, yeah.
And so they then decide, or their parents can tell that their child is socially maladjusted because they have such a phobia. I was very phobic about talking in front of my class throughout my schooling, even into college some. And I got through it, and sometimes did okay, sometimes did not do okay. A lot of times people had no idea that I struggled until, oh my gosh, I'm trying to give a speech and it's not going very well. I'm just getting stuck or just silence. I mean, there have been times when I've picked up the phone and couldn't say anything and just had to hang up. Because that day, the fluency really just wasn't there, and talking on the phone has never been something I've liked a lot. So, getting back to the question, children would do best if the stuttering could be that the remediation could begin as early as possible in their life. A lot of times, if a child is young enough and they do begin therapy, there's much more chance of success of them overcoming it, maybe even entirely.
I've never seek speech therapy, of course. I ramble enough. And I wouldn't know the numbers, or even if somebody asked me, is it expensive to... my
That's
child is needing a speech therapist.
Right.
I don't even know the first dollar.
That's a very loaded question, and here's why. Generally, the kiddos who get therapy more readily, and I'll just say it this way, they tend to come from poorer families, and things like Medicaid is very helpful in getting them those services and keeping them going.
Correct.
If they're doing a bit better financially, but let's say lower middle class to middle class, maybe even upper middle class,
yeah,
their insurance is going to be just from the marketplace. It's not going to cover a lot of stuttering.
right.
So maybe a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy would cover 8 visits, and maybe the child needs 100 visits. You know.
That's a yeah.
So, and
yeah.
then if they're self-pay, I know one of the companies that I work for now, I'm a very busy man. I do other things besides speech therapy. Also, am in investing. That's another conversation. But I know that one of the companies that I work for, self-pay, is $125 per 30-minute visit. So it's not cheap if you're going to pay out of pocket.
It's not if you're coming out of pocket, for sure.
Right.
When it comes to stuttering,
Mhm.
can it get, like, some people may look at a wound or a disease,
Mhm.
where, not saying stuttering is a disease, but
Sure.
when they use the language of, you need to tackle it now before it get worse. Can, if a person has even a slight stutter,
Mm-hmm.
could we look at it from the non-educated that don't know much about it? Could it get worse? Like, oh, that person should get therapy early so it won't get worse as they get older, or
That's a very good question. I think I know what you're asking. You know, again, just to make the first point, just to kind of launch me into the next thing I'll say. You know, the issue, it's not like, so stuttering, it seems to have myriad possible causes. So, for example, this young lady that I'm talking about, well, in her 30s, she's young to me. I am in my 50s. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-month-old.
oh man, perfect timing,
It's awesome.
baby.
Yes, I was finally mature enough to be a father.
Got it.
You know, a child, a person has the best chance to overcome stuttering if they start early. But things can happen later. In this young lady's case, the seizure activity damaged part of the brain, and it led to pretty significant stuttering. We've only had a few sessions now, and she's already doing well. But generally, if it's like my case or a child, they just start to stutter, you find that chances are it's a genetic issue. It might have to do some with skull formation. So, for example, just for those listening, there is a device called a Fluency Master, which we were able to acquire one in our master's program through me.
Okay.
Where the state funded it or something for the department, or maybe the company that makes them donated it to the department. But it looks like a hearing aid, and you put a piece in the ear canal. There's another microphone that gets taped onto the bone just below your earlobe. And so that when you talk, it's sending an accompanying buzz into your ear. So you can hear yourself talk, but you're also hearing like a meh, 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 as you talk. That's very audible. And you can adjust the volume as needed, but I know that wearing that, it was instantly easier to be fluent. So there's a theory in which at least some of the cases of stuttering are caused because the skull is misformed or malformed in some subtle, slight way that's not allowing good bone-conducted sound to be generated, which gives the brain, which would have given the brain more feedback in the attempt to speak, in the utterance, where the person is in the word or phrase. Yeah, it was very fascinating, and it was even easier to breathe better.
Yeah, I would assume that just in people, I think we all different when it comes to stuff. Even if you to name one thing, if you say stuttering,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume it's all different kinds, all different levels.
Right.
It's just not the
Absolutely.
same for every single
Absolutely.
person. So, and obviously we hear it very loud and clear when stutter may be like very severe.
Sure.
How it is in their brain, it may be a slightly more off. That's what caused it to be so heavy than somebody that may have a slight one. You know,
Right.
it's different for all. But that sounds like that's something that all people who stutter know about. Or correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say most don't. There's a lot of things about stuttering that I think a lot of stutterers do not know. I have shown up and have spoken at this event. It was just a small event in like the hallways of this school or whatever, where kids who stutter and their parents came, and those who could speak to it, like myself, we stood up and spoke about stuttering, answered the parents' questions.
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much that I shared that they had never heard before. So I think now, of course, like the last time I did that was some years ago, probably 10 years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think now with the internet, there's so much information that's just at our fingertips. And so I think a lot of families do know more about stuttering and their options. Let me speak a little bit to the differences in the severity.
Please.
I would say that generally, or I'll say typically, it's not that, let's say, the severe stutterer, it's not that their organic physical issue is way worse than, say, mine.
Okay.
It's that maybe their fear reaction is much greater. So stuttering is very complicated because I will say this, a lot of, let's say especially teenagers and even young adults, one of the things I strongly encourage them, if their stuttering bothers them greatly, is to see a psychologist and talk about that. Talk about their fear. Talk about the bit of self-loathing. I mean, I promise you I'm not used to having this much fluency at a time. This is just God help me out, because I said a prayer. I was like, Lord, just give me enough fluency just to not annoy everyone, you know.
Right.
And certainly and here you want to hear something else that is bizarre. Total side note. I've noticed this for years, and I dismissed it. You're not going to believe me when I'm telling you what I'm going to say, but I'm telling you it's true.
All ears.
I've noticed it over and over again. When there is a full moon, I stutter a lot less.
So if you were to stutter a lot less, you look for, or you just know?
So you know what's happened so many times, and I'm telling you, at first I was like, coincidence, but the coincidences kept piling up. I don't look at the sky. I don't care about nature. I love to play golf. I love to invest money in different things and do other hobbies, and I love to spend time with my children and my wife and our friends and family. But I don't care about nature. Again, I don't look up at the sky. Someone's like, look at that beautiful sunset. I couldn't be less interested. It's going to have to be amazing, and also maybe have a tornado in the distance for me to get interested, right? But what would happen time and again is that I would notice I'm having a really fluent day, and I would look up, and there would be a big old full moon staring at me.
And obviously you would notice it.
So many times.
You would notice it.
So many times. And after the 100th time of noticing that, or however many times, I was like, I don't understand it. I know that the moon affects our ocean waves, and they're on ground level, so something's going on. I can't be that many times. Could I tell you why? No. But so everyone's different. I would say that people's fear reactions are very different. I think for me, the stuttering really began to decrease when I just decided, you know what? If I have to stutter, I'm just going to stutter, and if someone doesn't like it, they can walk away.
Man, that's how I don't think people look at me as a person who stutters, but I think the person that I am, after X amount of time, I would just say forget it, man. If you don't want to listen, just don't listen. Just keep it pushing. But I think I would get over that hump to just be like, look, if you don't like what I got to say, just don't listen.
Right, absolutely. You know, one of the shows that my wife and I love to watch is The Voice, and this season, the judges are Snoop. He's great. He's
wonderful. I haven't seen an episode, but I've seen him on a panel.
Right, yeah. And Reba McEntire, Gwen Stefani, and Michael Bublé. And Bublé, I would say this too. The room has good acoustics. For me, that helps me with stuttering. So if I'm hearing almost like a little bit of a reverberation, that helps me a lot.
Man.
So that's interesting. Anyway, but what Michael Bublé, I've heard him say multiple times, and others too, is that, you know, somebody that just didn't quite sing the right song, they weren't at their best, and they didn't get a chair turn. None of the judges turned around to want to invite them to be coached and to be part of the season and the competition. And like I said, Michael Bublé, especially, I know he said this at least a few times, that all of us up here that you think so highly of, we spent a lot of time being told no and being told you're not good enough for what we want, and you know, and so I would just say, if you love something, keep at it.
I was thinking, when you just said that, it made me think about any artist or person out there that achieves a certain level of success that we all admire. Many, if not all, will often relay that story of it took a lot of no's to get here.
Right.
And
that's right.
I doubt if most of them documented those no's. So I look at it as, even, I thought it was so interesting, if you are fearful of the stutter, you should go seek therapy. And I'm like,
absolutely.
Dang, that's a good idea.
Right.
Because it's not only that you have it, but you are afraid, which I would want to get over that hurdle. And if that was, and I'm saying documented because it's just people with phones. We in them so much.
Oh my gosh.
If
they're a fifth limb.
Yeah, pretty much. We would just more of that awareness would be out there, even if I guess you got to get over that fear of probably being embarrassed or being judged, that I'm going to talk to my therapist about whatever little thing that I'm getting over it, and I'm having a few sessions, and that it is what it is.
Right.
Not that. So if I seen that, hypothetically, if I'm a person who stutters, like, man, is a reason that I'm not speaking out or talking or not being open as much as I want to is because of a fear. I never looked at it like that. I just looked at it. I mainly looked at it as if it was an embarrassment, not a fear. Like they would just embarrass.
Well, it's fear of being embarrassed, and it's fear of making others feel awkward. You know, one of the things that let me talk for a few minutes, and just share some things about stuttering that I think people who don't stutter don't understand, which is the vast majority of cases of stuttering, they will either kind of, like with children, they will either kind of spontaneously go away as they get older, whether they have therapy or not, or it will never go away. There is no cure. There's no magic pill. I think maybe in some cases the child's skull is changing shape, and it kind of figures out how to be shaped right, and then suddenly, oh, I'm not stuttering because I just don't need to stutter anymore. And as far as the phobic reaction, the stuttering is, in essence, the person's attempt to not stutter. That's the core of what stuttering really is. So, for example,
I agree. I understand.
So, for example, the actor, gosh, I'm blanking on his name, great actor, won an Oscar for this, for The King's Speech, Colin Firth. Watching that movie was painful for me as a stutterer because he nailed it. And people asked him, how did you just so perfectly nail stuttering for your role? And he said that whoever coached him explained to him early on, be a stutterer who's trying to not stutter, and you'll pretty much get it right away.
Yeah, when I'm listening to friends and just listening to it, well, just other people speak, especially since I've been working on my project and being involved with people who stutter, so many other people do it. And we just, now, is it severe? No. But they do it. And I guess because it's just not as often people
everybody stammers.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking, and we're thinking of the next thing we want to say, and we you know, like it reminds me of the scene in the movie Amadeus where the actor Tom Hulce, I think, plays Mozart, and when he would get nervous, when he's talking to the king or to the Italian music directors or talking to his father, you know, he would say, "Well, we haven't set
I hear that all the time.
all together. We, you know." And it's just so, and that's stammering. That's that's a person thinking, you know.
Instead of,
whereas a stutterer, for many stutterers, the most difficult thing for them to say verbally is their own name.
Yeah.
That's what's very different.
When I've been to two, I guess, events for students that's becoming SLPs, they introduce a few people who stutter, who's coming to speak or, you know, have some dialogue, and they all line up and introduce themselves. Pretty much all of them struggle right at the beginning. But once they get over that, some more than others, they give a little spiel just about themselves before the students start to ask questions. But that name thing is it can be and I guess from our point of view, we would think or assume it would be easier because that's something you have to say all the time.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
No, there are real incidences in which the stutterer changed their name to a name they felt was easier. Like there's a letter that they typically can say.
I didn't think it would go that.
No, that hasn't happened widely, but I've heard that story multiple times. They changed their name to begin with a letter they felt more confident saying, or only to begin to stutter the new name as well. You know, which lets you know how psychological stuttering is. You know, I can give, for anyone who wants to listen, I can give a quick speech therapy know-how of some techniques for someone to overcome stuttering. If they want to try on their own, you want to do that?
Sure.
Well, first of all, the number one enemy of the stutterer in talking is speed. What happens a lot of times is the stutterer, let's say they have a stuttering episode, and then they talk even faster to try to catch up.
I've heard that.
Yes.
I've heard that.
So if a stutterer, there is literally a speed, and it might be this slow or slower, where if you simply slowed down significantly and just really connected your words together gently, the problem would mostly go away, at least in some cases, if not many or even most. So gentle onsets, that's something else that we teach even in speech therapy, but certainly at Hollins College, where you begin a phrase very gently and you connect the words like that. So that's, and then breathing very full from the diaphragm. Feels like you're filling your stomach with air. You're not. You're pushing your diaphragm down, and it allows the lungs to expand downward even further and gives you a much bigger support of air. What you see stutterers do a lot of times because they're nervous is they take a big breath, they blow their air out, because sometimes blowing air out first got them unstuck. But they blow the air out and they give away all of their breath support. So the proper techniques of stuttering, which I am using.
That's great.
Breathe in full and you begin gently and just connect your words, and I try not to talk as fast as my brain's trying to think.
That's what caused a lot of us to stammer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and people are thinking while they're just verbalizing, and that's normal.
Yeah.
That is normal behavior. And what I would say to a stutterer is there is nothing wrong with stuttering.
I don't think
you
it
know,
is either.
If you don't like it, I understand. We want to be as close to perfect as we can be in certain contexts and situations. We don't want to call the cute girl on the phone and stutter at her when she doesn't even know you or know me, or I've had job interviews on the phone. It was tough to get the first hello out. Hello. And what has helped me beginning some years ago was to learn to just chuckle, apologize, and say, sorry for the stutter, I think I'm good now. And we laugh together. And the point is that pink elephant balloon in the room is popped now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. With my journey, learning, becoming friends and making friends, meeting new people who stutter, I started writing a story and the tail end of editing a feature film that I started working on regarding stuttering. And the audience that I made it for is people who stutter. Because I know there are films where we have characters here and there that stutter, that stand out, especially to that community, because you don't see many of them.
Right.
There's
not many Mel Tillises around where they're perfectly comfortable stuttering on camera in front of God and country. I mean,
not many at all.
No.
So I said, I've never seen a film where the main character stutters, like the number one.
Right.
And I said, I want to make that, and
that's cool.
It's going to be for that realm. Me, I like horror movies, but tons of people like horror movies. I like fast car movies.
Sure.
If you're a car guy, you're going to love that.
Right.
But I'm saying people who, if you start to narrow it even more, you may say people who like chess. There are movies about chess. If you like poker, there's movies about poker, stuttering isn't something like, hey, we stutter, let's, hoorah. But where is that film or films regarding that topic?
So as someone who doesn't stutter, I'm assuming you don't stutter.
No.
Why do you think that is?
I said when I was writing it at the beginning, I was very uneducated. I didn't know a lot of the hurdles that they have to go through. So when I'm writing, I'm like, is this how to go about this? Because I don't stutter. I don't have many friends that stutter. So I thought that was one, the process. I wasn't educated. Two, most of it is in for the entertainment, for the dollar. You know,
absolutely.
Is it the sexiest thing to make a film about?
Right.
And is the audience, do they want to listen to a person stutter for an hour and a half?
Right.
And
absolutely right.
Listening to those, I said, well, those people I don't care about.
Right.
The person who stutters
that's cool.
is who I want to make it for. So I said, if literally while shooting it and finishing and editing it, I'm saying if you are the type of person that says, I don't want to listen to these people stutter, that is fine, because I didn't make it for you.
Well, and I'll be honest, I don't. It's hard for me to watch people stutter, and it was the reason that the King's Speech, one of the very, very few characters based on a true story. I forget the name of the king, but it was he became king of the United Kingdom or Great Britain or England or whatever. Gosh, I should know more about that history, but the older brother had to step away from receiving that title, and so even though Colin Firth's character stuttered somewhat terribly, he was saddled with that responsibility of being the figurehead and leader of a nation, along with Winston Churchill during World War II. And so, so that was a very compelling story. And what I love what you're doing by making a film like that is I think you're showing maybe the world eventually that there's a lot of compelling stories involving people who happen to stutter.
I think it's tons and tons. Now,
Agreed.
My main focus was I want my lead. The story is about a person who stutters, but as I was working on it and crossing hurdles myself and learning, I said it could be so many more stories about the stuff that I'm hearing in the process. I said it could be so many. So my goal, or one of them, I would love more, because I don't think it's 0%. I would love more people who stutter to say, hey, I'd like to be a part of it.
Sure.
Or how can I get involved?
Right.
Because if you, in those different type of genres, they go get the experts in those films to get educated, or even put them inside the film, So if 2 years from now or whatever, I'm working on the second one or something, the first one does great and I can do a part 2. I would love more of that cast to be people who stutter, because you are the audience. I need you more than anybody, even if it's only for people who stutter. But we can sprinkle in some non-stuttering people. That's okay. We can listen to them.
Well, again, I've been blessed in that I have found some tools, and I've just noticed some things. Another thing I'll throw out there for anybody who stutters, or you have an autistic child, or you have an ADHD kiddo, get some of those. Get an essential oil focus blend. I know doTERRA has Intune. Cheaper version of that same blend is with Revive, called Concentrate, and I will put that on my wrists, on the back of my neck, get into the brainstem, because I think over time those oils can do a bit of healing, because unlike medications, they can pass through the blood-brain barrier. So something else that I wanted to say right here is that every stutterer is different. Every stutterer has slightly different characteristics to their stuttering, to their phobia profile, things that they, James Earl Jones, the actor, was a stutterer. And he found out that when he did plays, and he talked with his deep voice, and he did the lines that he memorized, he didn't stutter.
And that is so intriguing to me.
Isn't that so amazing?
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
With that, I just learned it. I just figured out what I need to do. I need to get every person who stutters and put them in film and put them in plays.
That would be a hard sell.
It may help.
I don't think well, I remember one of the most gut-wrenching experiences. Let me talk about one of mine. Just a sore memory. It was for a long time. Now I just kind of chuckle and shake my head and know that it was such a learning opportunity that passed me by. But I had so much in the deck stacked against me. I was a junior in high school in English class, and the teacher wanted us to have parts of this play and read them out loud. Okay. So a script, and there was this girl in the class named Nicole, who I was just, oh my God, I was over the moon for her. I bet,
man, I know it.
And so I was still kind of living as secretively about my issue as I could. I was not yet open at all about the fact that I do have a speech impediment, regardless of how I sound today. I do, and there are things to this day I will not sign up to go do. You know, my wife and I go to a pretty large church, and I'm not going to stand up in front of the 1,500 people and lead some prayers. Now, I've stood up in front of them and led a song or two or three that didn't require me to talk. So, but every stutterer has a different path. They've got, here's to me the most fascinating thing that I think you have an opportunity to go to great lengths at uncovering, which is there's a lot of incredibly competent and talented, gifted people who happen to stutter, but they're sort of like the silent population because they're not going to get on YouTube and do a podcast.
They're not
going to.
They're right.
They're not going to sign up to have a part in the play, or they're not going to get a casting agent and try to get a part in a movie. But something else that you could look up and look into is every now and then I know there was a young man on American Idol and there was a young lady a couple of seasons ago on America's Got Talent. I know the young lady, I remember her vividly. She had a very significant stutter, but she sang wonderfully. And so she stood there on stage and stuttered and said what she needed to say to introduce herself, to tell Simon Cowell and the rest of the judges where she's from and about herself. And here's what I think she had come to learn already, that I wish for every stutterer, that 99% of the world are wonderful people who are going to root for you. And if you simply smile and are open about your issue and you're not uncomfortable about it, if you're not uncomfortable in your own skin, they won't be uncomfortable either.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Ooh, that was good stuff. Mr. Scott, man.
Sure.
I appreciate it, buddy. It was awesome sauce. For anybody that may say, hey, I like that guy, he looks so cool and I got questions or whatever, how could they reach out? Website, social?
Whatever. I kind of tend to stay away from social media for the most part. There's a lot of oppression and suppression of the truth these last years, so I just kind of punted on most of that. LinkedIn, there's a wonderful picture of my wife and me, mostly of her, on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
That's about an 11-year-old photo. I used to have hair. I had regrown it with a medication that does work, but we decided to have kids, so I needed to get off of that so that I didn't damp down the stuff, the chemicals in my body that can help us make kids. So, I don't look like that on my LinkedIn profile anymore, and I'm perfectly happy with me. But approach me online, and I do work for a company, Cornerstone, and I do have other side things that I'm doing as well. But probably LinkedIn is the best way.
Cool beans.
We
finishing up our story, the Stuttering film, and once we get dates and stuff, I will definitely reach out. I would love for you to come.
For sure.
And check out the event.
We'd love to do that.
So thank you so much for coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Awesome sauce.